Welcome to Lunch with the Lord. I'm Pastor Mark. We're in Mark chapter 5. We're continuing in verse 3 this lesson with the casting out of the demons of these two men in Gadara. But before we begin, Jeremiah 15:16, thy words were found, and I did eat them, and thy word was unto me the joy and the rejoicing of my heart. Now it says in the first part of verse 3 that these two men that came to Jesus and the disciples, well, they were more than likely, as Luke says in Luke chapter 8, that they were naked. They came to Jesus and the disciples, but they had their dwelling in the tombs. And the Greek brings out that they actually lived in the tombs. Remember, the tombs, sepulchres at that time, were in sides of hills or in rocky places, and people would dig holes in the side of a hill, or they would dig into the side of a mountain, and that would be their tomb. And people lived there. Like these people, these two demon-possessed men, robbers would use them to attack people from, right? So I wanted to take a couple of minutes at the beginning of this lesson to talk about a subject of demon possession. But in no way is this an extended teaching on it, as you'll see. It's just dealing with a few questions on the subject. Now, it seems that Jesus was always casting demons out of people when he was here on earth. But after he rose from the dead, we only see it happen in one time in the Acts of the Apostles, and that was with Paul at Philippi in Acts chapter 16 and verse 18. Now, was the reason for this because Jesus was on earth and the demons were trying to hinder his work? Possibly. And now that Jesus has rose from the dead, they don't need to possess people? That's possible. But can people be possessed today? And I'm just going to ask a few questions and I'll answer them. You can have your own answer if you want. But the first question is can people today be possessed with demons? And I guess the answer is yes, because human beings haven't really changed since Jesus' time. You know, we still are sinners and we still have a sinful nature. So I guess people can still be possessed by demons today. What causes a demon to possess a person? And there could be many causes. Now, we don't know what caused these demons to possess these two men, but something must have taken place in their lives to allow these demons to have freedom to possess these men. Can a Christian be possessed? And I don't believe so. I don't believe that a Christian can be possessed, because once the Holy Spirit comes to live and reign within you, he takes up his residence within you. And so no, I don't believe that a Christian can be possessed by a demon. But here's another question. Can a Christian be influenced by demons? And the answer to this is absolutely. Absolutely, Christians can be influenced by demons, by Satan's kingdom. Peter was influenced when Jesus told Satan what? To get behind him, right? Satan influenced Peter to speak for his kingdom. Satan influenced Peter to speak for his kingdom. Peter wasn't possessed by Satan or any demon, but Satan's kingdom influenced Peter to speak for him. And it makes us think, if we were ever used by his kingdom to speak his desire or to do his work. This is why we are warned to be careful with our mouth, to be careful with our feet, right? To be careful with our eyes. Romans chapter 6 and verse 13 says that we are to use the members of our body as instruments of righteousness, not as instruments of unrighteousness. We are to use the members of our body as instruments of righteousness. Our mouth, what we say, our eyes, where we look, our ears, what are we going to listen to? So can Christians be influenced by demons and used by? Yes. Yes. Can there be demon possession among people today, among people in this day and age? And I guess there can be, but I think that it's more that people are more demon influenced than demon possessed. Unsaved people have no resistance against demon activity. Therefore, they can be easily used by Satan's kingdom to speak and act for Satan's kingdom. An unsaved person has no defense against Satan's kingdom to speak and to do Satan's kingdom's work here on this in this world. So, yes, unsaved people today can be possessed by demon spirits, and possibly it happens today. But I think moreover, people are more influenced by Satan's kingdom than they are possessed by his kingdom. Now, again, there's a lot more we could say on demon possession, and rather than just, a few questions that I asked. But the thing is what we need, the one thing that we need to know is that Satan's kingdom is actively involved in people's lives today, especially in the lives of those who pose the biggest threat. And who are they? They're the Christians, right? Satan is definitely active and involved in trying to hinder the work of God. So Satan's kingdom is going to be actively involved in trying to work against Christians' lives because they pose the biggest threat to his kingdom. But always remember, Satan's kingdom is a defeated kingdom. It's a defeated kingdom. It was defeated on the cross when Christ died on the cross and Jesus rose from the dead. When Jesus was resurrected from the dead, that sealed the defeat of his kingdom. So yes, his kingdom is active and working today in people's lives, especially against the Christian's life, especially. But it's a defeated kingdom. Stay close to God. As I said a few lessons ago, always remember Jesus is in the boat, right? Now, it says here in verse 3, again, who had his dwelling among the tombs, and no man could bind him, right? No man could bind him. And this is what happens to someone who gives themselves over to their sinful passions. Man does not have the power or the intellect to control or to help someone out of their dilemma. And this also goes for Christians who stray away from God and start to seek the lusts and the pleasures of this world or of their flesh. Only God can deliver from sin and from evil influence, right? It says here that no man could bind them. Here these demons, they tried, I'm sure. Imagine in your mind, you're seeing these two demon-possessed men. No man could, probably the people of the town or the village around them where they were of Gadara, they probably got sick and tired of these two guys. They came out and they tried to help them out, help them or help themselves by binding them. and chaining them because they were probably causing a lot of problems in the area, but they couldn't be bound. And this is what happens with people in sinful. When a person gives their heart over to a sinful lifestyle, they can't be bound. There's no power within man to help a person that has given themselves over to their sinful passions, to their sinful lust, to the desires of this world. And then it says in the last part of verse 3, not with chains. It says no man could. They tried to bind him, not even with chains. Now the Greek word for chains is halusis, and it means that which cannot be loosed. And Paul uses this Greek word halusis in two interesting places. In Ephesians chapter 6 verse 20 and in 2 Timothy chapter 1 and verse 16. Let's look at both of those. In Ephesians chapter 6 verse 20, Paul said that he was an ambassador in bonds, or in halusis, in chains. Paul says, I am God's ambassador, and I am in chains. Now, Paul was literally in chains in Rome. We do know that. Paul was in chains in Rome when this letter was written in Ephesians, right? But he was also in chains to the will of God to be an ambassador. For Paul's whole life, God had bound him as his representative to the world, and we don't see anywhere where Paul desired to break his chains as an ambassador. Paul said, I am an ambassador, and I am in chains. Well, I know you're in chains, Paul. I see you're in prison. You have chains on you. Paul says, no, you're not understanding. I am God's ambassador, and God has me in chains. This is what he's saying. God has me in chains. I'm chained to be an ambassador for God. These chains on earth, that's not the important thing. The important thing is I am in chains to be an ambassador for God. Right? And what about our life? What about our lives? Right? Have you been chained by the Holy Spirit to serve God in some capacity? There are many who break the chains when hard times come. They lose faith. They question God's love for them. They question his work in their life. You need to determine that you are going all the way with God. That you will keep your chains. You will humble yourself to those chains, and you will love those chains. What has God bound you to? Has God bound you to be an ambassador for? Has God bound you to be a missionary? Has God bound you to be a fervent mother, a fervent father for the Lord? Right? What has God bound you? What does the Holy Spirit change you to? And there are many that they get tired of the chains and they cast the chains off. I don't want to be God's ambassador anymore. It's too tough. The storms of this life are coming. All right? Trials and persecutions come. I'm tired of being God's slave, God's bound to God's will for my life. Right? And we need to understand that we are God's bond slave in chains to his will. But understand, determine in your heart that you will go all the way with God. You're going to go all the way. You know what you're going to do? You're going to keep those chains on. You're gonna love those chains. You're going to love those chains. You're going to give yourself to those chains. Why? Because they're God's chains for your life. In Psalm 84, verse 10, what? I'd rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than to dwell in the tents of the wicked. It's better to be chained to God's service than to have free reign with sin in this world. It's better to be chained to God's service than it is to have freedom in this world to live after your lusts and pleasures and to be used, what? By Satan's kingdom, right? To be used by Satan's, to be influenced by Satan's kingdom, to be a mouthpiece for Satan. And then in 2 Timothy chapter 1 and verse 16, Paul uses the same Greek word, halusis, right? It says, Anissa Forrest was not ashamed of Paul's chains. Are we ashamed? Are we jealous? Are we resentful of those people who are going forward, going deeper and deeper into purity and into holiness? Our walk with God is a narrow walk. It is a walk, what? It's a walk of holiness. It's a walk of purity in mind. It's a walk of purity in our actions. The longer we walk with God, the less of this world that should be in us. Listen, Paul said, Anissa Forrest is not ashamed of my chains. Not ashamed of it. Not ashamed of my chains. Listen, are we ashamed of people who are strong Christians? We shouldn't be. Right? Are we strong Christian? Are we going deeper into the holiness of God? Are we cutting away things of this world so that we can focus our hearts and our minds on things above? And the more you do that, the more worldly Christians will want to not associate with you. Anissa Forrest could have said, Paul's in chains. I want to go and see him. He's, I don't want to identify with Paul while he's in chains, being persecuted for the sake of Christ. I'm going to stay away from. No. Anissa Forrest went and sought him out and found him. And he said, Anissa Forrest, he's not ashamed of my chains. Listen, let's not be ashamed to walk close to God. Let's not be ashamed to take steps closer into God's purity, into God's holiness. And as we do, yes, there will be Christians around you who will not want to go that deep with you. They will not want to give their lives more and more to prayer like you do. They will not want to read the Bible or study the Bible a little bit more each day like you do. And they don't want to be around you. They don't want to identify with you in that bond and those chains that God has chained you to. Listen, let's love the chains of God. Let's love the chains of God and walk closer to him in purity. I'm telling you again and again, the closer, the more you die to this world, the more blessings you're going to get. Oh, it's tremendous. The closer you walk to God, the more he fills your heart with love and grace. The more you see, listen, as we walk by faith, the more the invisible things of God and the invisible things of heaven become visible. And the more the visible things of this world disappear from sight. Right? As we walk by faith, the more the invisible things of God and of heaven become visible. And also the more the visible things of this world disappear from our sight. In 2 Corinthians 4, verse 18, what? While we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are unseen. For the things which are seen are temporal. The things which are seen are temporal. But the things which are unseen, they're eternal. They're eternal. Listen, we need, as we draw close to God. What did Jesus say? Jesus said, the pure in heart will see God. And I've said that many lessons ago. The pure in heart will see God. I think Jesus means that not only, yes, we will see God when we die and go to heaven, but also the pure in heart today. Those that draw close to God in purity in their heart, in their walk, they die to the things of this world. They begin to see God more clearly in the workings of their life that day. Right? In every day that you live, if you decide, you purpose in your heart that you're going to walk more closer to Him, pray more, read His word more, love more, be gracious more. The more we draw close to Him, the more we will see God in the workings of our life, in the workings of other people's lives. The pure, listen, Jesus said, the pure in heart see God. The pure in heart see God. Don't be ashamed of those who wear the chains of a full commitment to God. And don't you be ashamed to be chained by God and give God your whole heart. Let me say that one more time. Don't be ashamed of those who wear the chains of a full commitment to God. And don't you be ashamed to be chained by God and give your whole heart to God. Don't be ashamed of it. Paul said, Anissa Forrest was not ashamed of my chain. I'm chained to God. I'm an ambassador for God. And every Christian should seek to be chained by God, to be His ambassador, to be His servant here on earth. And we're to be chained and to love those chains until the day we go home. All right? Until next lesson, walk with the Lord. I know He walks with you.